right, well, welcome back for another episode. I have my co-host Steve here, and then we currently don't have our third co-host Terrence because he recently, just brought in his first newborn.
Yeah.
Just a few days ago, right?
Yeah, literally shortly after the last episode. So congrats to him, and we have a bit of a change of scenery for this week's episode. And so
we're actually going to do something a little bit differently just because it's just going to be me and Steve this time. And we're going to be looking up some, very common hiring, career, and recruitment myths that people still believe to this day, and trying to get our take on it as like fact or myth, and like kind of seeing what holds up and what doesn't.
Pretty much it'll be our version of Mythbusters.
Yes, exactly.
So we'll we just have a bunch of random articles here that we selected from online sources, and we're just going to dive into it. Myth number one, all you need to do is apply online.
All you need to do is apply online? Like, just to get a job?
Is that a myth?
I think that's a myth.
I agree. Like, well, depends what type of job. If it's a remote job, you're not,
Well, like, is it impossible to get a job only if you apply online? No. You can definitely get it, but is that going to give you the best chances of getting a job? No. You need to use multiple different channels and not multiple different methods in order to get a job. So maybe we talk about those things in a little bit more depth, because like I've helped even recently a few of my friends get a job, right? And applying online, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. So if you do apply for like thousands of jobs, then yeah, you might like a few of them might hit you up, but it's just one channel and one method. And I think like LinkedIn, have a really good LinkedIn like profile, and depending on what kind of industry and what kind of job you're in, you might have a portfolio too. If you're like a designer, you might want to have a portfolio or a website to be able to have other people find you in different ways. And one thing that's like, I would say very like not many people do, and not many people do well, is networking.
That is, well, yeah, because of COVID, but I can tell you previously, networking 100%.
Right? I would say that's even more important than applying online.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer, outside of applying, I'm a huge believer in your network, know? Like, I think that is, I don't know if that's a question coming up, but like sometimes people get jobs because of their network. That is totally factual.
Yeah,
I
good people know good people. Yep. And like, I will say that if given a choice between a referral and an applicant, we're choosing referrals every time.
Yeah, I mean,
every time.
At my current company, like we value referrals so much that we have made it a priority on the talent team to interview or at least get a meeting, guaranteed meeting, just because you never know. They might be a fit for a different organization.
And one other thing is that, people might not know, but when it comes to tech companies, when you actually refer someone into your company, you get a bonus. You get a referral bonus.
Yeah. And
some big tech companies, they pay thousands of dollars if you refer someone in and they actually get hired, which is like a really good incentive.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So, yeah, it's definitely, I would say, networking is even more important than applying online.
100%. But combining both of them make it a
Of course, combo. Yeah. Combining both of them is like, you're going to get the most effectiveness.
Oh, okay. This is a good one.
Yeah.
The myth is your resume needs to be one page.
Oh man.
What are your thoughts on that one? I'll give my thoughts after.
It's so insane because, how long have we been in the industry? Like 9 years now?
Yeah,
9 years?
Yeah.
And I remember in high school, civics class, and it was like, I don't know, what is it, grade 9? Grade 9 and 10. You get like civics class where they teach you how to write a resume. They do like a career aptitude test, like things of that nature. And one of the things that the career counselor or whoever the teacher was like 1-page resumes. And that myth was quickly busted. Just the first year working at a recruitment agency, dealing with a high amount of volume in regards to tech recruitment specifically, where we actually saw resumes in like multiple pages, like
I've seen
10
90.
pages.
I've seen 90 once, but that was a government like structured, resume where you had to break down every project, every keyword.
And it was actually it's actually one of those myths where it's like it's actually a deterrent when it's only one page. When I see only a one-page resume, I'm like, oh, this person hasn't done much in their life. Like,
well, to be fair, it depends what stage, right? Like, I feel like for me personally, I had a one-pager when I first started out of university and in high school because you don't have the content yet.
Yes.
And I will say for this, like, I can speak on IT. One page is not common, 100%.
Yes, exactly.
But in finance, for example, or accounting, it might be actually more well perceived or the norm. So
right.
we don't know that world.
So maybe just in the context of tech.
But in the context of
tech industry,
it is totally a myth to have one page. Like, it's hard enough to condense 10 years into 2 pages. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen it happen all the time. And the amount of candidates that we run into that say, oh, someone told me to do 2 pages or 1 page.
Oh, all the time. It's like, who told you this?
Yeah, who told you that?
Who told you this? Like, no, I'm telling you right now, don't do that.
But I will say there is such thing as too much, because if you put too much, it goes to show.
Yeah, that 90 pager, that might be a little bit much.
It shows that you might not know how to be concise. That's what it reflects. So that myth is definitely busted. Is definitely busted.
For sure.
Here's another one that I think a lot of new grads run into. Cover letters are not important. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it depends also on the type of role and how early you are into your career. I think cover letters have like a sort of like an expiration date the further you are in your career. So the more senior you are, the less likely that you're gonna require or need a cover letter. But if you're like an intern or a co-op or it's an entry-level job, I think cover letters help a lot to be able to give a little bit more, I guess, personality and context towards like who you are as an individual, rather than just based off of your limited amount of experience, because you might not have much or nothing at all. So if there's like, you don't have any work experience, it's like, well, then the only thing that you can go off by is like your personality, work ethic, and like passions, interests, skills, and can all be covered in a cover letter. But if you're 20 years in the industry, like, I don't think the cover letter is really going to be a make or break.
Yeah, I would say this one's like fact and myth, because as you need one when you're junior, but as you get more and more experience, I think the importance of it goes down. Yeah, that's my, I guess, my take on it. And believe it or not, as a recruiter, I read cover letters. I don't know about you. I read some of them.
I read some of them.
But if it feels, believe it or not, recruiters can't see if it feels like it's just copy and pasted on a template, or if it's just a generic
I can tell a template. I can tell a template.
I make sure if you're gonna do a cover letter, make sure it's the right position. The amount of times I've seen it where someone writes, I'm applying for a QA job, when it actually is a project manager. It's like, okay, come on, the attention to detail's missing. So you got to make sure you're on the ball on top if you're going to include a cover letter. Make sure it's the right context and right company and position.
Yeah. Here's a good one. So this is one from Forbes. This is headhunters or agency recruiters. Pretty much in the same vein. They are to help the job seekers find a job. That's what they say.
That's the myth?
That's the myth. Rather than help the company find people.
I would say it's a bit of both. But if you're talking about from a job perspective, 100% the job of a recruiter or headhunter is for the best interest of the client or the company. That's what I would say.
For a headhunter.
Yes, headhunter.
I agree with that. It's a very interesting type of job where you are helping the candidates, but only if they kind of help you, type of thing. And you do want what's best for them at the end of the day, but you're also not getting paid by them.
I would say two-way street, like they can equally talk to as many recruiters or headhunters as they want to, and leverage their tools that way. You don't have to stick with one. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I guess they help. Like the candidates and headhunters help each other out.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
This is one that I think, without even have to look online, like a lot of people will ask and wonder is, can a recruiter know, or does a company know within the first 5 seconds of looking at a resume if they're going to be a yay or a nay?
So here's the thing about like resume screening. Okay, this is the topic essentially, right? I think there's a couple of things about it that with the human mind, there's a lot of training and pattern recognition, and the more you do something, the more patterns you recognize, and you're able to be quicker at things. So what I'll say is that when I first started as a recruiter, I did take a bit of time, reading over each resume that I looked over, and let's say it was like 5-10 minutes or so. But after what I can only imagine is like over 100,000 resumes,
probably in the millions at this point,
maybe in
right?
the millions, right? And over the past 9 years, I do probably take about 10-20 seconds now.
Depends on the role. For me,
Depending on the role,
Depending on the
yeah.
role, right? If it's junior role or if it's a very specific niche role, you
Yeah.
kind of know what you're looking for. So if you see a profile for like a product manager and they're a project manager, you may just simply pass on them.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
depends on the hiring manager, right? Like if they're flexible, like during that intake call, when you talk to a hiring manager, it's like, oh,
That's
what else
true.
will you take? It's like, oh, I might consider this route. It's like, oh, okay.
But and it also depends on like the amount of volume that you are getting. Some like for tech companies, we get like thousands of resumes like a week, right? So to be able, but what I will say is we don't use any artificial intelligence or automated screening computers. We use human beings to be able to
Yes.
screen each and every single one of the resumes. Do we do it in a very fast pace? Yes, because we need to, but it's based off of experience and pattern recognition over years. But that's still better than having a computer, match you and screen you out. So that's one of the things that people often think.
It's a misconception.
They think that like computers are
Rejecting.
the resumes all the time. That's simply not the case.
Yeah, 1,000% confirmed. And like my experiences too, it is someone did something to trigger that rejection letter. It is not automated. So
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's
Someone
thinking-
looked at your resume.
someone's manually doing
a
it.
human being has looked at your resume and it made a decision whether to reject or move forward. But it was a human. It was not a computer.
Yeah. Here's one that I think is relevant from our agency experience that people thought, and I know I'm not the only person that thought this, is do agencies, by giving a lower salary, make more money when you're hiring a full-time recruitment for a client?
Oh, yeah. That's
People think that of agencies, I
Well,
remember.
the reason why they think that is because the difference between the permanent and contract kind of work that they do. But yeah, when it comes to permanent, it's like it's a percentage of the salary
Correct.
that's given to the recruitment agency.
So it's a no. I would
So,
say it's a no,
yeah,
and
it's a no.
the recruiters are usually trying to work with the candidate to get the best number.
Yeah.
As long as it's falling within the budget of a hiring,
Well,
company. Right?
if anything, the higher the salary, the more money that the recruiter makes. So it's actually beneficial for them to get you a higher salary. So they're not trying to screw you over or anything like that.
Yeah. So for most applicants that are using agencies, I would say don't assume that they're trying to push you down for the sake of pushing you down. Usually it means they have a budget that they actually have to work with the hiring manager, and they want to place you as bad as you want the job.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not.
true.
At the end of the day, it takes two to tangle, and they want it as bad as you, and they're
Exactly. Because
that's
they don't get paid if you don't get hired. So it's like
correct.
So here's a big one that is a very interesting one that a lot of people struggle with. It says you need to have all the qualifications in the job description in order to get selected. And you hear this all the time. It's like, they require 5+ years of experience, but it's an entry-level job. Or like they require these technologies and you need to have every single one of them in order to get hired. And so people think that. And sometimes people don't even apply for jobs because they think they're underqualified. What do you think about this myth?
I think that is definitely a myth. Like the amount of exceptions I've seen, and the amount of honestly, me and James, I think we're pretty alike in terms of our recruitment styles. Like, yes, we're technical in nature, but at the same time, a good recruiter can understand deeper than what the job requirements are and the keywords on a resume. They can see through that and be like, this person has these skills that can translate really well for this job.
Yes.
So,
and I think that like I especially think the whole years of experience thing, personally, is bullshit.
Yes, 100%. Because you and I mean, when we were in the staffing world, like agency world, I would say we were technically senior and potentially had even more experiences or as good as someone that had 5-10 years of agency experience.
I've
right?
even worked with people who have had 20 years of recruitment experience and still don't understand some of the basic concepts of like recruitment and like qualifying and finding a fit for a role. So I think it's the same with regards to technical roles as well. Like just because you've been coding for 10 years doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at coding. That just means that you've been doing it for 10 years. So someone that's been coding for a year could actually be a better coder than you.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So I think the whole years of experience thing is so bullshit, and that really falls into this whole thing. It's like, oh, do you have to follow all the qualifications, in regards to, and when it comes to technologies too, it's like, just because you don't have the exact technology that they have, but you have something that's comparable, that's good enough. You understand the fundamentals of the technology. You most of it's like the same, but maybe it's just a different brand. I think, not enough people, actually a lot of people hire for potential and for like soft skills, and not a lot of people know that though.
Yes, a lot of companies are willing to hire for aptitude and potential versus the hard skill. So if you're gonna apply, shoot your shot. Like, it's
I would say shoot your shot.
free to apply. At the end of the day, it's free to apply. It takes maybe 2 minutes of your time, but like it's free to apply, and like you never know.
So apply for the jobs that you don't think that you like might not be qualified for. And I think this, maybe this might be a little bit off topic about MISS, but it's the whole conception of like how people feel about their current job. The whole thing about imposter syndrome. Like, it's an actual like epidemic. Like, I would say the majority of people who are working right now have imposter syndrome. They don't think that they are qualified for the job that they're currently doing. So that's why it makes them very scared to apply for jobs that are even higher up than what they have. It's like, oh, I don't think I'm qualified for this job, so I'm not going to apply for this other job that I don't have the qualifications for. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it from time and time again with the people that I work with. I tell them to, like, this is a myth, like you can apply for this job even though you don't have 100% of the qualifications, and they always end up getting the job. And so, but they have imposter syndrome too. So you kind of have to get over that. Like, it's like, why do you think you have imposter syndrome? Why do you think that you don't? You
can't do it, right?
You can't, especially you even see it with people who have like been at their own job for like 5 years. You're like, you've been at this job for 5 years. You haven't been put on a performance incentive plan. You're
doing something right.
You're doing something right. They're paying you, each week. So like, why do you feel? But do you ever come across people with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, even in the work environment or people, as an agency recruiter, I remember the amount of times like I had to convince someone being like, this is the job for you. Yeah. And it's like, no, I'm missing this or I'm missing that from the JD. And it's sad, but I think the JD scares a lot of people
JD
off.
is a job description.
The way the job descriptions are written by certain companies, and keep in mind, some hiring managers do put everything they need, but realistically speaking, this kind of goes back to the myth of, do you need everything on the job description? No, because the JD is there to provide some sort of template, but don't treat it as the end all be all criteria.
Yes.
Put it that way.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that alone deters so many people away, and
really does.
Give people self-doubt that they can't do the job because, I'm missing 10 years, but I'm senior,
Do you think that in the future that people should get rid of the whole years of experience thing in job descriptions?
The what experience?
Years of experience. That shouldn't be in it. Shouldn't even be a part of it.
I would say it depends, because certain jobs do require it, right? Otherwise, you're going to have, if you take that away, I feel like you're going to have too many, from a company perspective, you'll have too many applicants to pick from, and that is also counterproductive, right? Like, people.
But wouldn't like technical evaluations just like filter out those individuals?
I think technical evaluations, yes, but then that also pros
like,
and cons.
what isn't that more important than years of experience?
Yes, depending on the job.
Yes.
Because it could deter away people from doing it. If they're going to apply like for a job and they got to do a technical assessment to pass that first screen, they might not even do it depending on how competitive the market is, right? So like it's a fine line, I would say.
Yeah.
I would say there's no real answer for that. I would say companies are, I think they're slowly moving away from putting too much on a JD, and like they're trying to be cognizant of that.
I see it now where there's like a lot of companies now are making it a little bit more wider where they put a range of years.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
2 to 5 years experience, blah, blah. But like, I'm just saying like in the future, like that next step would just be like not having any of
that product management experience. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tricky one because it depends. Like,
it'd be an interesting experiment.
Like if I would say this, if you are 1 or 2 years away from the minimum requirements, assuming that it's an experienced hire, apply. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but if they're not listening to this podcast or they're not doing their own research about these myths being busted, they're going to be preconceived that like they're not going to apply.
Yes.
So how do you capture those people, those individuals who have the imposter syndrome, those people who don't think they qualify and who don't understand the whole myth thing, get rid of it in total?
Not even getting rid of it. I think one thing that we've done at our company right now is create a future opportunities like portal for people to apply regardless of their experience. Because like some companies don't even have that. You know what I mean? Some people take it at face value when they go to a website. I see XYZ position. Oh, because they don't have it posted, that means they're not hiring.
Right.
But surprisingly, like...
So what do you mean by that when it comes to like future career portals? Like, is it a generic...
They can create generic
jobs.
I think there will become a time where there'll be generic job postings that will capture certain people.
And those ones won't have years of experience.
Correct. Because you're trying to appeal to the masses.
And if a job does require years of experience, you can create a separate custom job posting for
that's what I think it's
called. See, I think that's smart.
Right?
I think
right?
I think that's the way to go about it. You're
capturing the best of both worlds.
You're capturing the
specifics, but also you're capturing the broader audience who may be interested in your company, but may
who might think that they are qualified for that special job posting.
Correct.
I like that. I think that could be the potential future.
Here's one for Canadians, relevant to the Canadian market.
Mm-hmm.
Myth is I need Canadian work experience to land a job in my desired field.
You need
what are your thoughts on
Canadian work experience to land a Canadian job?
Correct. What do you think on that? That's a big one.
I think that's such an outdated myth. Like if we're talking about nowadays about things being remote, I think like regionality is just like is redundant at this point. I think like any type of experience and you can work from anywhere. I think the whole you need specific regional experience is done for.
Yeah, I think it's less important nowadays. Yeah. Definitely. I think when we first started, I'm not gonna lie.
When we first started, like 8-9 years ago, it was like, 100%. You needed that Canadian experience.
It's a factor, but I think as we go towards a more global economy world, like people don't.
Especially if you're looking to join a global company.
100%.
If it's a global company and it's hiring remotely, they don't care where your experience comes from. And like I said, that's where a lot of, like I said before, a lot of the technical evaluation, like I don't care where someone's worked, how long they've worked, where they are in the world. If they pass the technical evaluations, which is a very tough thing to do in the first place, then they are good enough to join the organization.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think that's as relevant as it should be anymore.
Yeah, but you're right. Back then, it was definitely much more important.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another one from Forbes. How negotiable are offers? This was a specific one. It's like, this is our best offer means that you can't negotiate.
I mean, I think that's definitely a it's a tricky question, is I'm going to say. There's no right or wrong answer because depends on the company, depends on the recruiter, depends on the candidate. There's so many factors involved. I mean, I can tell you from my experience, like we try to make something work, right? Like at the end of the day, both parties are trying to make something work.
It's true.
Like sometimes the reality is companies don't have the budget, right? Like there is a squeeze in their burn rate or something, or their hiring potential. Or I think one big thing that people forget as an applicant and they take for granted is pay equity. That's a huge thing.
That's something that they
don't think about.
Take into consideration.
As a manager, they're going to push back because they see the numbers and they know what they have to manage on the team. But I think that's something that I think people just take for granted because they heard through a friend, hey, you're making 200K.
Right.
And that means I'm worth 200K. That may not be the case. I mean, you're only worth as much as someone's willing to pay.
That's true.
Right? So
that's true. But does that mean that like,
is there room for negotiation?
Well, like, you're only willing to, you're only worth what someone's willing to pay, but like, other people will want to pay you a different amount. Like, so your value is very determinant on the hiring manager, the company. It's a very tough thing because yes, like one company might value at X amount, but then another company values you at Y amount, right? So
yeah, I mean, you see those memes all the time. The whole like, oh, you have this old watch, take it to your yard sale, local yard sale. People are just gonna pay you $10. You take it to like an antique store, they'll pay you like, maybe $50, and then you take it to an auction, private auction, you might get $10,000. So it's just finding, I guess, knowing what your worth is, and like I hear it all the time.
But how does someone know what their worth is?
I think online, there's resources online like levels and stuff like that have a bit, but don't let that be the end all be all. I mean, don't let that be a showstopper if you love the company, if you love the position, because keep in mind, like, it will all balance out. I've seen it balance out over time.
Yeah.
Just like how if you're new to like a country and you want your first job and you're willing to take a pay cut for that first job, it balances out down the road.
I think money is the third most important thing when people decide to choose jobs. Culture and purpose. Purpose is number one and culture is second. But money is third. So you're right. It's not the end all be all. It's definitely, but yeah, knowing your worth and like knowing what you're, I guess, it's balancing those factors together and ensuring that it's worth, like, maybe you get lower amount of money at this X company, but the culture and purpose is way better, and the type of work that you're doing, right? So then the balance has to be right for you, for your stage in life, and for your level in your career, and all that type of stuff. So I would say there is room for negotiation, always, as long as you are a little bit realistic and know your worth.
Yes.
Yeah.
But within reason, just keep it realistic, I would say, is the biggest thing. I mean, the amount of times I've seen people go, I mean, shooting for the moon is one thing, but at the same time, you got to keep it a little realistic, right? If you're 1 year of experience and like you're trying to get the salary of someone with 10 plus years, I don't know if that's the best. And thinking that the company will kind of meet in the middle, that you might actually scare them away too much that they won't even consider.
It's true.
It could backfire.
It could backfire if you are like too overzealous with the amount that you're asking for.
Correct.
That like doesn't even make sense, especially if it's like you're asking for like $100,000 over what you're currently making. Like it can get to that point where it's like, no, that's not like, and then they withdraw and rescind the offer. So that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Here's a myth that it's kind of interesting that I would have never considered, but recruiters have the power to decide if one gets a job or not.
Recruiters have the power to decide if someone gets a job or not. I would say depends on the organization. I think recruiters do have a lot of influence.
Yes.
And the more, I guess, partnership that the executives have with HR and with recruitment, the more influence that we can provide. But there are some organizations where hiring managers have total autonomy and total decision-making power, but others where the partnership between recruitment and the business is very strong, and it's like it can sometimes get to close to a 50-50 partnership.
I agree. I think recruiters, I mean, firsthand experience, I've seen it where we've, as a recruitment agency or as a recruiter, had the power to literally push an offer through. Yeah. And also go against a manager, and if they value as a skilled recruiter, they might actually not give an offer because of what you say. So
it's true.
It's it definitely does depend on the situation, but you can't ever rule out the influence of a recruiter. That I think is
you cannot rule it out. Here's an interesting one. Your educational degree dictates your career path.
That's 100% busted. Like in this day and age, I think 20 years back, a degree held its value very well, and like everyone everyone wanted a degree because it automatically led to like a good job. I think nowadays it's dead. The degree, the whole getting a formal education is definitely not as important, at least from what I've seen.
No, it's true.
It definitely isn't. I think even taking one of those crash courses, 2-week crash courses on product management, development, boot camps they're called. Yeah. They can sometimes put you ahead of people that have had a 4-year degree.
Yeah. And if you look at Google, they actually have these courses that you can take online, and you can get these like digital degrees, and for coding, for product UX, for marketing, and they actually offer opportunities and internships and co-ops to those people that actually take those courses. And it doesn't require a college degree. It doesn't require a university degree. It doesn't require any formal post-secondary education. But I will say, like, when we first started way back 8-9 years ago, that there was a bit of importance to that, and
it was table stakes at that point. You
needed it, but like studies have shown that it's not necessary, and it's very interesting. Where like we were talking about job descriptions earlier, about like how if you need all qualifications, one of them was having a bachelor's degree.
Back then, yes.
Right? Back then, there was every job description you saw required bachelor's degree, required master's, required this and this, required MBA for like manager.
Well, you think about it, it's kind of funny if you think about it from that. If you're drawing a hard line on education, then half these startup creators or these very successful billionaires, like the Mark Zuckerberg, they wouldn't have even existed, or they can't even get a job technically because they didn't finish the degrees.
Exactly.
Right? So it's ironic that
you'd be really missing out on a lot of innovation and a lot of great talent if you limit yourself between specific educational requirements. And I even back then, like there was a lot of talk about like University of Waterloo. You have a computer science degree from there. And from a Canadian standpoint, that you're golden. Like that's all you really need. It's a guaranteed job and one of the big tech companies. But I don't find that it's as important as it once was.
No, 100%. This one's a pretty good one. Changing jobs regularly is frowned upon by employers.
So this is interesting in a sense. It's like it's both true and a myth at the same time. What I'll say is that on average during this generation, people change their jobs 12 times in their life. So it's actually changed quite significantly from when it was like back then in the 70s and 80s, where people would stay at their job for a long time. Like, for example, my dad, he's been at the same company for 28 years now, and it's just the same job the whole time. And when you look at Japan, they have a concept called salaryman, where they work and are dedicated and loyal to one company and one company only. And that's a very traditional way of thinking, and the way that we thought of jobs and careers. Like, you gotta be dedicated to one. And what we found is that the further the generations go, is that we like autonomy and freedom, and we like to have choice,
options,
yes. Right? When it came to traveling, with airplanes and online dating, with all these dating apps, options have become more and more like
almost limitless. Like, you're just
almost
given
limited
so many options,
right? So like, why, if I have so much options in other aspects of my life, why wouldn't I want these options for my career? So then that's when people started moving jobs more and more frequently. But with a caveat, I will say that if someone's moving job every 6 months,
it's a bit of a red flag.
That would be a bit of a red flag for sure. But if it's like every 1 to 2 years, no big deal. Yeah. That's normal. Yeah. That's like, it's become normalized.
Just be prepared though. If you do that, just be prepared to answer that question in an interview.
Why did you leave this last position? And so that's an important question that recruiters will ask, but they might ask regardless. It's not one of those things that, we're at this company for 2 years and then left, like, and that's a red flag and we're asking questions. I would ask that same question if someone was there for 5 years.
You always want to know, as a recruiter,
you always want to know
the motivation. You always want to understand the motivation and what was missing. Right?
Exactly. And if it's a case where if it's a recurring pattern, like we said before about pattern recognition, like you leave every 6 months for a job because you just can't follow direction and you have problems with authority and you don't get along with others and like stuff like that, and like maybe there's some like legal cases against you, then it's like, oh, okay, like maybe that's a pattern. That's a red flag that like you might not just be a good employee.
No, 100%.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty much a good time to wrap up. So those are some of the recruitment myths that we've seen online. Hopefully that, was able to educate our viewers and listeners about, how to deal with these and what was true and what wasn't true, and help you potentially land your new job.
Yeah. And if you guys have any myths of your own or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or send us an email and we will address them in future podcasts.
Awesome. Amazing. Well,
all right.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.